Hello everyone, my name is Syafiq Wildan Harjianto, and today this is the second project of sociolinguistic. So let's just get into the first part of the presentation. First topic is style, context, and register. So what is style, context, and register? First, the style is the how we adjust our tone, speed, and pronunciation. We naturally shift between speech gears from formal to casual to manage social distance and respect, from Jews in 1961. And then we have context, it's the where and why, the social situation, physical settings, and our relationship with the listener by Holmes in 2013. Context acts as the social states that dictates which communication rules apply. And last, the register is what we say. The specific vocabulary and phrases used by particular groups. Examples include medical terms used by doctors, legal jargon, and or specialized internet slang. Example, we have a formal voice, the original speech by Joseph R. Biden. Here, the linguistic and context observation has the context of a highly formal, historic, and national ceremony on the steps of the U.S. Capitol. The institutional settings demands a polished public display. Linguistic clues in here. The speaker names political figures by their full titles, uses highly structured sentences, and completely avoids casual contractions. Unless the human meaning in this speech is this is a formal style creates a feeling of respect, safety, and shared institutional traditions. The second example, as a casual voice in here, the example is taken from X being a post from Elon Musk. First, the linguistic and context observation. The context in here is a digital fast-paced microblogging platform from X. The setting values quick updates and direct peer-to-peer connection over ceremony. The linguistic clues in here, he used written shortcuts like LOL to TBH, drop pronouns like crazy how, and writes phonetically like gonna instead of going to. The human meaning in this speech is this is relaxed style makes a powerful tech leader feel approachable, down to earth, and relatable to internet users. Speaking for the listeners for context and audience, the audience mirror by Alan Bell 1984. Bell's theory explained that we speak to match our listeners. We naturally adapt to our audience to make them feel comfortable and connected. Second, context dictates expectations. The context or the setting and relationships determines who is listening. The formal public square requires a speaker to adopt a broadcaster style. Why Elon Musk writes casually? His context in social media. He writes casually because his digital audience expects a conversational, unfiltered friend rather than a distant executive. Why is this topic important? For linguistic styling, creating an identity from scholar Penelope Eckert in 2012 shows that language is not just a passive habit. Instead, we actively use words to build a public personality. We choose certain phrases, accents, and speeds of talking to tell the world who we are and what makes we hold dear. How context shapes identity. For the traditional leader, like Biden's formal context requires him to connect himself to a long-standing history, law, and stable government institutions. For the tech rebel, like Elon Musk's casual online context allows him to break traditional rules, building his image as an independent, forward-thinking expert. So what researchers found for this topic? Texting is Creative by Tagliamonte and Dennis in 2008. Their study shows that texting and online writing are not broken or lazy English. It is a creative hybrid, a way of talking with our fingers that has its own logical rules. It has Taking a Social Stance by Nicholas Copeland in 2007. This research highlights how we use our voice to make a stance. Shifting our styles allows us to stand close to someone in friendship or step back in formal respect. Building human bonds. Both studies support our examples. They prove that when Biden or Musk choose their words, they are using natural human looks tools to build connection and status. Comparing these two styles, the common goal of this topic, mainly we want to connect both speakers and choosing their words intentionally. Neither is speaking by accident. Both Biden and Musk shape their speech to match with their specific audience expects. Shows how flexible human language really is. The big difference here, how they build trust. Biden uses traditional formal rules to project trust and authority. Musk does the opposite. He intentionally breaks formal rules to build friendly, modern bonds, proving that good speech depends entirely on the situation. Second topic is the language stereotypes. Definition here, language stereotypes is an honest look at how we judge people based on their accent, why this happens, and how it impacts real lives in school, jobs, and courts. Warmth versus smartness. In here, the status and solidarity. Sociolinguistic by Giles and Billings in 2004 find that we judge accents on two main scales. First, the status, how smart or successful we think the speaker is. Second, solidarity, how friendly or trustworthy they feel. Often regional accents are rated high on friendliness but low on smartness due to unfair stereotypes. Language subordination by the last one is the push for proper speech. Language subordination by Rosina Lippi Green in 1997 wrote that society teaches us to believe there is only one correct accent. Schools, movies, and news sites often convince people that their regional or cultural accents are incorrect or lazy, which is not true. Example number one is like the Southern accent bias. In here, a personal story. People still hear a draw and think slow, uneducated, maybe bigoted. I've had editors in New York talk down to me, assuming my mind moves at the speed of my tongue, as if a Southern accent is a sign of cognitive delay. This is a story being written in the New York Times by Rick Bragg in 2018. So, what is happening in here? The writer describes how people assume he is uneducated because he speaks with a slow southern drawl. Linguistic clues in here, the drawl refers to holding vowels longer, like saying instead of I. The human meaning in here, this bias is proxy for regional prejudice. People use the sound of voice to judge of someone's mental speed, which can hurt their career and confidence. Second example, like a dialect in court. The testimony in here, I could hear it. He said, "Why you following me for?" And then I heard a grunt like, "Get off, get off." This context is from Rachel Gentle's witness testimony, AAVE. And the case is from State of Florida versus George Zimmerman trial in 2013. The source you can see in here and the analysis study is from Rickford and King in 2016. So what is happening in here? A key witness speaks in African American Vernacular English, AAVE, in a major trial. The jury dismissed her testimony as hard to understand. Linguistic clues in here, she drops word endings and skips verbs like are, saying why you following instead of why are you following. The human meaning, AAVE, is a fully structured dialect with logical rules. When court dismisses it as bad grammar, it leads to deep unfairness and real life injustice. How accent bias works in here? First, the myth of perfect language. We are taught in schools and media that there is only one correct way to speak. This makes other natural accents look lazy or wrong. Second is losing our voice. By Lippy Green's research shows that when people are told their native voice is bad, they often quiet, lose confidence, or feel ashamed of where they came from. Third is gatekeepers of power. By labeling regional and cultural dialects as incorrect, institutions like courts or corporate office keep certain groups from finding success. What the science prove? The accent bias starts pretty early by Kinzel, Schatz, and Spelk in 2009. Researchers found that young children will choose friends based on their accent rather than their race. This proves that accent bias is deeply rooted. From a very young age, we use the sound of a voice to decide who belongs in our social circle. For the Language on Trial by Rickford and King 2016, this study analyzed courtroom transcript and found that jurors regularly misunderstood that distrusted AAVE speakers. This shows that accent bias is not just about minor social teasing. It can actively lead to unfair outcomes in justice system. Comparing the prejudice, why they share the same unfair root, both Southern accent bias and dialect bias in court judge speakers' intelligence based on standard rules. In both cases, listeners fail to hear the actual message because they are too busy judging the accent. How the impact varies. The level of harm in here could be while Southern accent might lead to social teasing or job hurtless. Dialect bias in a courtroom can lead to someone losing their freedom. The consequences are much higher for cultural minorities, showing how accent bias might mirror systematic power imbalance. For the conclusion in topic in here, language is human. Every dialect and accent is logical, structured, and beautiful. By understanding sociolinguistics, we learn to focus on what a person is saying, rather than judging how they say it. Language should build bridges, not walls. Now let's just get into the second part of case studies. The first topic in here is gender exclusive speech. The scenario, every employee must submit his report and a good programmer should improve his coding skills. What it is, gender exclusive speech refers to language forms that use words referencing one gender, often a masculine default, while neglecting others. Alternative forms, replacing his with singular their, using plural, employees or programmers must submit their projects, or restructuring to avoid pronouns entirely. Why it occurs? Historically, rooted in male-dominated professional environments where masculine terms were normalized as universal defaults. In COVID meaning, communities that technical or leadership roles belong naturally to men, rendering female employees invisible or secondary. Sociolinguistic role in here, it acts as a linguistic barrier in the workplace, signaling a lower sense of belonging and fit for women. So what is the academic analysis in here? First, we have a textbook theory, an introduction to sociolinguistics by Ronald Wardow in 2010. Wardow argues that using generic masculine pronouns is not gender neutral. Instead, it triggers mental imagery of men, directly maintaining and reinforcing social gender hierarchies in professional domains. And then the second article, when he doesn't mean you, from the authors is Jane G. Stott and Nilanjana Dasgupta in 2011. Through empirical testing, they proved that women exposed to masculine generic pronouns, gender exclusive speech, in jobs advertisement reported significantly lower workplace motivation and expected feelings of ostracism. Second article that proof this is evidence of gendered wording by Daniel Gauncher, G. Friesen, and ACK in 2011. They demonstrated that subtle male-centric word choices function as a powerful gatekeepers. These linguistic patterns preserve gender segregation by causing women to feel they do not belong in those professions. And then there is a second case is linguistic density. The scenario, we have a lecturer A, language is system of communication, and lecturer B said language function as dynamic symbolic system, facilitating the transmission and negotiation of meaning, and so on. Linguistic density in here refers to the conversation of content-carrying words, nouns, adjective, verbs, in a sentence compared to grammatical linking words. For high density, lecturer B uses vastly higher density, packing complex, abstract terms into a single sentence. Why this code occurs? Academic registers prioritize maximum informational packaging into the shortest space, which is a native formal writing but heavy when spoken. Effects on understanding it. While dense speech sounds highly authoritative, it drastically increases cognitive load, triggering student fatigue and confusion. The balance is here. Simple language by lecturer A demonstrates understanding. Dense language by lecturer B is precise but serves as an academic filter. And this is supported by first textbook theory in the title of Spoken and Written Language by M.A.K. Halliday, 1985. Halliday established that written language is characterized by high lexical density, packaged ideas, while spoken language is grammatically complex but lexically simple. Delivering a dense written style register orally creates an unnatural processing barrier for listeners. And the first article is from Lexical Density and Readability by Finn, To, S. Van, and G. Thomas in 2013. Their research proves that high lexical density directly elevates text and lectures difficulty. They argue that educators must actively lower linguistic density in spoken delivery to ensure effective students' comprehension. And the second article is Lexical Threshold and Learning Autos by Batia Laufer and G. Ravenhorst in 2010. They demonstrated that processing highly dense vocabularies requires extensive pre-existing word knowledge. In classroom, dense, unsimplified explanation alienate students who lack specialized background registers. And now we get into the third study case. It's about linguistic complexity. We have a scenario here. We have version A, students must submit the form by Friday. And then we have version B, students who have completed and fulfilled are required to submit the form before the specific deadline. In linguistic complexity, this measures structural depth of sentence, such as the use of embedded relative clauses, passive phrasing, and conditional subclauses. For greater complexity, version B relies on dense grammatical dependencies, making it much harder to parse. Why this occurs? Institutions employ syntactically complex writing to sound objective, legally comprehensive, and formal, trying to cover every loophole in one sentence. The effects on processing those words is highly complexity overloads working memory. Readers miss the core action submitting the form amid the surrounding conditional phrases. So when this could be appropriate in formal legal contracts or legislative codes, highly counterproductive in general public students' announcements. This is supported by first the textbook theory. Variation across speech or writing by Douglas Biber in 1988. Biber's here corpus studies shows that officials, bureaucratic, and academic documents have highly syntactic complexity. Because these structures are designed for slow, iterative reading, they cause comprehension failure when used for quick, action-oriented public notices. And the first article is from What is Simple in Sample Texts by Scott A. Crossley, G. Yang, and D. McNamara in 2014. Their linguistic analysis shows that simplifying syntactic connection accelerates processing speed and prevents errors. Simple syntax allows students to instantly identify deadlines and take correct administrative actions. And then second article is Comprehension and its Correlates by Yoon-hee Yeon and Junko Yamashita in 2014. Their meta-analysis shows that complex sentence structure act as major reading barriers. Highly complex phrasing drains working memory, particularly affecting diverse multilingual student bodies. The fourth case study is about language style. The scenario here, we have a first message. Hey prof, what's up? I need your signature as soon as possible, ASAP. And second message, good morning professor, I would like to request your signature. So the language style here, the variation is in tone, vocabulary, and grammar that speakers use to adapt the perceived social context. The differences in here, message 1 use intimate, casual, colloquial slang. Message number 2 uses standard, polite, formal academic grammar. So why this occurs? This style shifts allow speakers to signal respect and manage social distance in interaction. The meaning conveyed in here, message 1 signals entitlement and disregard for the professor status. Message number 2 signals respect, institutional awareness, and polite requests. Asymmetry in context, politeness features are necessary when asking for assistance from individuals within asymmetrical power structures. This is supported first by a textbook theory, An Introduction to Sociolinguistics. The same is by Ronald Wardow in 2010 in discussing about CAT. Citing Gill's Communication Accommodation Theory, or CAT, Wardow notes that speakers consciously or subconsciously adjust their language style, converging or diverging, to match listener expectations, seek approval, and navigate social distance. The first journal to support this is To Email or Not Email by Carrie K. Stevens, Y. Miller, and G. Goldstein in 2009. Using CAT, they found that professors form significantly more negative assessment of students who send overly casual, non-accommodating emails, which directly affects their willingness to assist the students. The second journal article is from Academic Email Politeness by Maria Economido Kogetsidis in 2011. Her study reveals that students often use direct, brief styles in emails without intending to be rude. However, professors interpret these styles as demanding, demonstrating a clear mismatch in stylistic social expectations. The fifth case study here we have the role of context, the scenario here. During a classroom presentation, a student remarks, "This project is really sick." Some hear it as terrible, while others decode it as amazing. Context in here, the physical and social cultural environment, including relationships and age dynamics that allows listeners to make sense of those words. Different meanings. The scenario could lead into different meanings. Lexical items are not static. Sick has evolved within youth subcultures through semantic inversion, changing from bad to excellent. Contextual factors, the age of participant, the formal academic setting, the and shared cultural backgrounds determine how the slang is decoded. linguistic friction. In formal settings, using informal peer slang without adaptation leads to interpretive friction between generations. And the takeaway in here, meaning is not stored statically in dictionaries. It is co-created dynamically in real situations. The first academic analysis that support this is from Foundations and Sociolinguistics by Dale Hymes in 1974. Hymes' speaking framework emphasized that setting in classroom and participants by like lecturer and students dictate a valid interpretation boundaries. Mismatching slang with a formal setting leads directly into communication breakdown. First article to support this is a college slang and classroom context by Connie Abel in 2012. Abel demonstrates that a collegiate slang acts as a dynamic in-group marker. However, because slang meanings shift rapidly, using them in structured classroom presentation risks alienations and misinterpretation by out-group members. The second article is from Context of Slang and Interpretation by Mary Bacholz in 2011. Bacholz argues that slang serves as a social badge of identity. Outside its native informal context, slang ceases to build solidarity and instead is decoded as either a literal error or a failure to adapt to professionals' expectation. And now the sixth case study, we have a language register situation. The scenario in here, two peers exhibit symptoms of hypertension and requires immediate pharmacological interventions. So family has high blood pressures and needs medication soon. The register in here, language varieties associated with specific professions, contexts, or social groups, featuring specialized words and structures. Why the doctor shifting in here registers bridges the gap between experts' knowledge and lay person's understanding, ensuring clinical safety and comfort. Factors of choice in this scenario, the register choices are influenced by the listener's background, the setting, the clinical round, or the family room, and the communicational goal. The human meanings in here, technical jargon conveys clinical objectivity and professional distance. Everyday register builds a terrific alliance based on trust. For communication value, the correct register shift democratize clinical facts and empower families to make informated healthcare choices. In here, the supporting theory are first from an introduction to sociolinguistics again from Ronald Wardow in 2010. Wardow defines registers as a functional language variety. He states that competent professional communicators must be bidialectal or multi-register, capable of translating complex in-group terminology and lay audience to maintain institutional connection. And then there is from an article, Doctor-Patient Register Variation by Richard L. Street in 2012. Street shows that doctors who align their registers with their patients achieve significantly higher treatment cooperation, better emotional coping, and superior clinical health outcomes. And the second article is from How Medical Jargon Affects Recall from C. M. Castro and C. Wilson and F. Wang from 2007. This study shows that using medical registers with patients blocks their ability to recall critical instructions, alienates families, and directly leads to accidental medication errors. And the last case study is a situation about linguistic stereotypes. The scenario here, the manager states women are naturally better at communication while men naturally better at leadership. The linguistic stereotypes in here, generalization that link linguistic abilities or traits directly to specific demographic or social groups. For professional impact, such talks reduce individual employees to gendered categories, keeping women away from leadership roles and discouraging men from entering collaborative roles. Why this occurs? It reflects and maintains traditional social expectations that divide leadership, like assertive for male from nurturing supportive for female. The human impact in here could be this statement: create a glass ceiling by making it seem like female leadership or male communication is an unnatural deviation from the norm. The solution here, they need to focus on individual competencies and use merit-based language that does not generalize based on gender. This is supported first by a textbook theory from English with an Accent by Rosina Lippi-Green in 1997. Lippi-Green here represents the language subordination model. She explained how institutions use verbal stereotyping to justify social hierarchy, framing generalizations as natural truths to protect traditional distribution of power. And then in first article, From Role Congruity and Prejudice by Alice H. Eagley and Stephen G. Carrow. In 2002, they proved that language associating leadership with masculine stereotypes creates a systematic prejudice. Female leaders face bias because their gender roles is seen as incompatible with traditional leadership expectation. And second article is From Gendered Wording in Recruitment by D. Goucher, Jefferson, and ACK in 2011. They demonstrated that gender stereotypes were subconscious filter candidates, reinforcing structural segregation by deterring qualified applications who feel they do not fit the traditional gender profile of the role. The conclusion here, across the 7 studies, sociolinguistics reveals a core truth. Language is never a static, cold set of rules. It is the ultimate tool of human connection, social identity, and empathy. As professional communicators, our task is to remove exclusionary structures, understand our audience, and build linguistic bridges of respect. That's it for my presentation.